I never thought this day would come. But here I am, standing at the crossroads of a broken marriage and shattered family ties, trying to make sense of everything. My world has been turned upside down by the two people I trusted the most, my husband and my sister. To think that my own flesh and blood could betray me like this still feels like a bad dream. But here we are. Let me take you back a few months, to the days before everything came crashing down. I had always believed that family was sacred. We were a close-knit bunch. My husband, Chris, my sister, Lily, and I. Growing up, we did everything together, from holiday dinners to random movie nights. I thought my relationship with both of them was rock solid, but sometimes life has a way of blindsiding you when you least expect it. It started subtly. At first, there were the little things, Chris staying late at work more often, or Lily dropping by unannounced when she knew I was out. I didn't think much of it, but then came the whispers. Chris began to act distant, and I noticed Lily's behavior growing more possessive around him. There were moments when I'd walk into a room and find them talking in hushed tones, but the second I entered, they'd both flash forced smiles. My gut told me something was off, but I pushed the thought away. Surely I was just being paranoid. Then one day, I found something I wasn't supposed to see. It was a text message on Chris's phone, a message from Lily. It was a string of words that hit me like a freight train. I can't believe we're really doing this. It feels so wrong, but I want you to know I'm here for you, no matter what. My heart stopped. It was like a bomb had gone off in my chest. I thought I was going to collapse right there. I confronted Chris immediately. His face turned pale, and for the first time in years, I saw him at a loss for words. He tried to cover it up, saying it was just a joke, that I was overthinking things. But I knew. I knew something had happened. Something that would change our lives forever. And then, the bombshell came. Chris sat me down the following evening, after I'd spent the entire day reeling from the discovery. He admitted it. Lily and we've been seeing each other. I'm sorry, but I'm in love with her. I froze, unable to process the words. My own husband, the man I had built a life with, the father of our children, he had fallen in love with my sister. The betrayal was beyond anything I could have imagined. It didn't stop there. Lily, my own sister, the person I had always protected and looked out for, didn't just want to apologize. No, she demanded I leave the house. "It's over between you two," she said, cold as ice. "This is where you get out. Chris and I are starting a new life together, and you're in the way." That was it. That was the moment everything shattered. I stood there, frozen, my world crumbling around me. How could they do this? How could they betray me so completely? But I wasn't going to just sit back and take it. I wasn't going to let them think they could destroy everything I had worked for. They thought I was weak, that I would bow down and leave. But what they didn't know was that I had a plan of my own. Before all of this happened, I never imagined I'd be in this position. When Chris and I first met, it was like a fairy tale. He was everything I had ever dreamed of. Handsome, kind, and supportive. We were that couple everyone envied. We married young, bought a house together, and started a family. Everything seemed perfect. He treated me like I was the only woman in the world, and I, in turn, devoted myself to him. I believed in our relationship with every fiber of my being. We were best friends, partners, and lovers. Nothing could break us. Lily, my younger sister, was a different story. She had always been the more carefree, spontaneous one. Growing up, we didn't always get along. There were fights, arguments, and plenty of sibling rivalry. But as we got older, I found myself defending her more often. She'd come to me for advice, and I'd always be there to listen. She was my sister, after all. I helped her through tough times, whether it was relationship drama or career struggles. I never once thought that she'd betray me in the worst possible way. Looking back, I realize now that I had been so blinded by love for Chris and loyalty to my sister that I couldn't see the warning signs. I missed the subtle ways in which Chris started treating me differently. the ways Lily would linger a bit too long when she was around him. I just thought it was all normal. After all, she was my sister. But with every day that passed, something felt more off. I chalked it up to stress, to the pressures of life. Maybe I was just overthinking things. And then came the subtle favoritism. I had always been the responsible one in our family, taking care of everything from bills to holiday dinners and making sure everyone was okay. But I noticed Chris becoming more distant. When I would try to talk to him about our relationship, he'd brush me off, claiming he was too busy. Meanwhile, Lily would always show up when he needed her, offering to help with things I was already handling. At first, I thought it was just her being thoughtful. She was always eager to help, always the one who would drop everything for Chris. But I didn't realize how manipulative that behavior could be. There were moments I felt like I was losing my grip on things, but I convinced myself that it was just a phase. Maybe we were just in a rut. But as the weeks passed, Chris and Lily's connection seemed to grow stronger. It was subtle at first, just little touches, lingering glances, moments when they'd laugh at inside jokes that I wasn't a part of. I started to feel like a stranger in my own home. One night I came home early from work, hoping to surprise Chris. The surprise was on me. I walked into the living room, and there they were, sitting on the couch, holding hands. It wasn't a casual thing. The way they looked at each other made my stomach drop. That was the first time I felt the ground shift beneath me, like I was standing on a fault line waiting for everything to break. Still, I tried to rationalize it. Maybe I'm just being paranoid, I thought. They're just close, that's all. It's nothing. But deep down, I knew. My instincts were screaming at me that something wasn't right. Every time I confronted Chris about my suspicions, he'd laugh it off, telling me I was imagining things. But I wasn't imagining the way he'd avoid eye contact, or the way he'd make excuses to be around Lily more and more. It became clear that something had changed in their relationship, something I couldn't ignore. The breaking point came one weekend, when Lily invited us to her place for dinner. As usual, I was excited to see her. After all, she was my sister, and we'd been getting along so well lately. But when I walked into her apartment, I was hit with the smell of something different, something I couldn't place. It was in the air. It wasn't just the perfume she wore. It was something more, something deeper. And then, there it was, sitting on the coffee table, a letter from Chris. My eyes locked onto it before I could stop myself. There, in his unmistakable handwriting, was a note. It was an apology, a confession. "I'm so sorry, Lily," the note said. "I can't stay away from you. I need to be with you, even if it means hurting my family." I felt the floor drop out from under me. My own sister had crossed the line, and my husband had fallen for it. I confronted them that night. The truth came spilling out like a dam breaking. They had been having an affair for months. Chris admitted that he had fallen in love with Lily. She didn't try to deny it. In fact, she seemed almost proud of it. It was like a slap in the face. I couldn't believe the words coming from their mouths. That's when Lily made her demand. She told me that I had to leave the house. "This is our home now," she said. "You need to go so we can move on with our lives." I was stunned. This wasn't just betrayal. It was an attack on everything I had worked for, everything I had built with Chris, my family, my home, my entire life. Gone. All because they thought they could destroy me without consequences. The thing is, I wasn't going to just walk away. I wasn't going to let them get away with it. They thought I would crumble, that I'd give up everything and disappear. But they were wrong. I wasn't about to let them get away with this. Not after everything we had been through together. They thought they had won, but they had no idea what I was about to do. After that night, when Chris and Lily so casually tore my life apart, I knew something had to change. But instead of wallowing in my own heartbreak, I chose to focus on what I could control. I was angry, yes, but more than that, I was determined. I wasn't going to be the victim in their little love affair. Number I was going to show them exactly who they were messing with. I decided I wouldn't confront them right away. Instead, I took a step back and began gathering information, quietly, discreetly. The more I observed, the more I realized how arrogant they had become. They had grown so comfortable, so confident that they had everything under control, that they forgot to cover their tracks. They thought I was just going to leave quietly, fade into the background, and disappear. But they couldn't have been more wrong. The first step was finding out how deep this affair really ran. I started by checking Chris's phone records and emails. I had access to everything, passwords, accounts, you name it. And once I started looking, I didn't stop. I found dozens of messages between them, each one more damning than the last. They weren't even trying to hide it anymore. Chris was planning a life with Lily, and Lily was already setting up her own future with him, something they were too foolish to keep secret. There were even plans to take our family's savings and start fresh, just the two of them. They had no idea that I had access to all of this, and it was exactly what I needed to ruin them. But it wasn't just about the affair. No, I wanted to expose them for what they really were: selfish, manipulative, and blind to the damage they had caused. They had taken everything from me: my husband, my family, my peace of mind, and I was going to take it all back. As I sifted through their messages, I made sure to save every single one. Screenshots, copies, anything I could use. But I didn't act immediately. I knew their confidence was their greatest weakness. They didn't think I would fight back. They didn't think I could. So, I began to plan my revenge. Quietly. Methodically. One evening, as I was going through some old financial statements, I came across something unexpected: a large withdrawal from our joint account. It wasn't a small amount either. Chris had been sneaking money out for months, moving it into an account under Lily's name. He thought I wouldn't notice. He thought he could steal from me and not have to face the consequences. But this was perfect. This was exactly the leverage I needed. I wasn't going to just confront them and get angry. No, I needed to hit them where it hurt the most: their wallets. I spent hours researching the legalities of financial fraud and consulting with a few trusted friends who worked in law. The more I learned, the more I realized that Chris's little side account was more than just an affair. It was an illegal attempt to steal from me. That wasn't something I could let slide. Then, it was time for step 2 of my plan: gathering a few key people on my side. It's amazing how quickly people start talking when you start asking the right questions. I reached out to mutual friends and family members, people who were close enough to both Chris and Lily to know about their affair, but far enough removed to avoid getting caught in the crossfire. Slowly, I began to piece together a web of information, small details that painted an ugly picture of how Chris and Lily had been lying to everyone, including themselves. People were shocked when I revealed what I had found. They had no idea just how much Chris had been keeping from everyone, and they didn't realize the kind of person Lily had become. I wasn't just planning a confrontation, I was building a case. One conversation at a time, I started to put everything together, making sure that when the time came, they wouldn't just be caught off guard, they would be completely blindsided. But the turning point came one night when I overheard a conversation between Chris and Lily. I wasn't even trying to eavesdrop, but I accidentally overheard them talking in the kitchen. Their voices were hushed, but it didn't take much to hear the smugness in their tone. Chris was saying something like, "We're almost there, Lily. I just need her to leave, and we can finally start over. We'll take the money, get rid of the house, and be free." Lily's laughter echoed through the house. "She'll never see it coming. It's all ours now, Chris." I felt like I was on fire inside. They thought they had already won. They thought I was weak, that I wouldn't fight back. But hearing that conversation solidified everything. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was about standing up for myself and making sure they paid for everything they had taken from me. They weren't just destroying my family, they were stealing my future. That was the moment when everything changed. I wasn't going to just sit back and let them destroy everything I'd worked for. They thought they had the upper hand, but now I was in control. It was time to make my move. I started taking legal action, documenting every move they made and every message they sent. With all the evidence in my hands, I knew it was only a matter of time before they realized they had made a huge mistake. The day I'd been waiting for finally arrived. I had spent weeks, no months, planning every single detail. Every piece of evidence, every conversation, every bit of information I had collected came together like a perfectly orchestrated symphony. Chris and Lily had no idea what was coming. They thought they had me cornered, that I would walk away and let them have the life they wanted, but I wasn't going to let them win. It all started when I invited Chris over to the house for what he thought was just a conversation. I could see the confidence in his eyes as he walked through the front door. He thought he had already won, that I had no power left to stop him. But as soon as he sat down across from me, I saw the shift in his demeanor. He was no longer the confident man I had once known. He was nervous, unsure, because he had no idea that I knew everything. I started with the basics. Nothing too revealing, just enough to get his attention. "Chris, we need to talk about our finances," I said, keeping my tone calm, even though my heart was racing in my chest. "I noticed some strange withdrawals from our account. Care to explain that?" His face flushed. I watched him struggle for a moment, trying to come up with an excuse. "I don't know what you're talking about," he stammered. But I wasn't fooled. I already had the proof. I pulled out the bank statements, showing him the transfer of money into Lily's account. "Don't lie to me, Chris. I've already spoken to the bank. I know everything." His eyes darted between the papers and my face, the realization of what was happening sinking in. Then came the next bombshell. I pulled out the screenshots of the messages between him and Lily, the ones where they discussed their future plans, how they were going to take everything from me and leave me with nothing. I watched his face fall as he realized that everything had been exposed. "You think you can just take my money and my life and get away with it?" I asked, my voice growing steadier with each word. "Well, you're wrong." I could see him physically shrink in front of me, the weight of his betrayal finally hitting him. But I wasn't done. I could hear Lily's footsteps on the stairs, and I knew she'd be joining us soon. But this wasn't going to be a private conversation. No, I had something special planned for her too. The second she walked in, I stood up and faced her. "You too, Lily," I said, my voice filled with an icy calm. "You think you can just waltz into my life and take everything? Well, I have news for you." Lily froze in the doorway, her eyes locking onto mine. There was a split second where she thought she could backpedal, maybe try to salvage something. But it was too late for that. I handed her the same stack of messages I had shown Chris. "I know about everything. The affair, the plans to steal from me, the way you two have been lying and manipulating everyone around you. It's all here, in black and white." The look on her face was priceless. It was the first time I had ever seen her so speechless, so caught off guard. She tried to deny it, of course. She claimed that everything had been a misunderstanding. But we both knew the truth. She had no way to defend herself, not when the proof was right in front of her. Chris was on his knees now, begging, pleading for forgiveness. But I wasn't interested in his apologies. I wasn't interested in hearing him beg. He had already made his choice, and there was no going back. He had betrayed me in the worst possible way, and now he was going to pay the price. I stood tall, feeling a rush of power I hadn't felt in months. "You both thought you could destroy me," I said, my voice cold and steady. "But now it's my turn. Everything you've worked for, everything you've taken from me, is about to come crashing down." With that, I made the final move. I had already contacted a lawyer and prepared a lawsuit for financial fraud. I had all the evidence I needed to take everything they thought they'd stolen from me. The money, the house, the assets, everything would be legally transferred back into my name. I made sure the news would get out too. I wasn't going to let them walk away without consequences. Lily's face went pale when I dropped the final bombshell. "You think this is over? You're going to lose everything, Lily. You and Chris are going to lose it all." I watched as their plan unraveled before their eyes. The smugness they had carried around for months disappeared, replaced by sheer panic. Chris tried to stop me, to beg me not to go through with it, but it was too late. The damage had been done, and there was no undoing it now. As I watched them both crumble, I realized something. Something that brought me a sense of peace I hadn't expected. I was free. I had taken control back. And now, they would have to face the consequences of their actions. The aftermath of everything was almost surreal. For months, Chris and Lily had lived in their little bubble, convinced they could get away with destroying my life. They thought they had won, that I would just disappear and let them build a future together. But instead, they found themselves with nothing. And I couldn't help but savor the sense of control I now had over the situation. Chris tried to salvage whatever was left, but it was clear that everything he had worked for was slipping through his fingers. The house, our house, was legally mine again. The savings he had siphoned off into his secret account? Gone. Every penny was returned to its rightful place, leaving him with no financial leverage. But it didn't stop there. His career also took a hit. I made sure that a few well-placed calls to his colleagues, those who had once trusted him, made it clear what kind of man he truly was. I wasn't the only one who had been deceived. It wasn't long before Chris was let go from his job. Word had spread about his betrayal, and his reputation was in tatters. No one wanted to be associated with a man who would cheat on his wife with her sister, let alone engage in shady financial practices. I had nothing to do with his firing. He did that all on his own. But the satisfaction of seeing him fall from grace was more than I could have ever imagined. I knew he would never recover from this. He had lost everything: his career, his family, his dignity. And the worst part was, he had nobody to blame but himself. Lily, on the other hand, tried to make things right, or at least pretend she could. She reached out to me countless times, begging for forgiveness. She cried, she apologized, she promised she'd fix everything. But I didn't want to hear it. There was no going back from what she had done. She had destroyed our family. And now, she had to live with the consequences. I cut ties with her completely. I didn't even give her the satisfaction of a response. I wasn't interested in listening to her excuses. She had chosen her path, and now she had to walk it alone. But the most crushing blow came when Lily tried to salvage her relationship with Chris. After he lost his job and everything began to crumble around him, she realized that she had made a grave mistake. She thought she could have it all: Chris, the house, the money. But in the end, she was left with nothing. Chris, desperate to hold on to whatever dignity he had left, rejected her advances. Their once confident affair turned into a desperate, pathetic attempt at clinging to a life that no longer existed. I never saw Chris or Lily again after that. They faded into the background of my life, two shadows of their former selves. But for me, life moved on. I focused on rebuilding, not just financially, but emotionally. I threw myself into work, into projects I had long neglected. My friends and family rallied behind me, offering their support and reminding me that I was stronger than I had ever realized. I moved forward, not just surviving, but thriving. The house became my sanctuary again, a place where I could finally heal. And eventually, I found love again. Not with someone else, not yet, but with myself. I had come through the worst of it, and I had come out on the other side stronger than I ever thought possible. As for Chris and Lily, they tried to rebuild their lives, but the damage had been done. The community knew who they were now. No matter how much they tried to pretend otherwise, they were forever marked by their betrayal. Chris ended up in a dead-end job, far away from the success he had once enjoyed. And Lily? She had to start over from scratch, no longer the carefree, manipulative sister she once was. The connections she had, those few people who had once supported her, disappeared as quickly as they had come. And me? Well, I was free. Free from the lies, the deceit, the heartbreak. I had reclaimed my life, my dignity, and my power. In the end, I didn't need them to validate me. I had always been strong enough to stand on my own. They had underestimated me, and that was their biggest mistake. I walked away from this chapter of my life with my head held high, knowing that I had won, not just in the material sense, but in the most important way possible. I had reclaimed my self-worth, and that was something no one could ever take from me again.